This is another research refresher from the JCSU Writing Studio. I'm Dr. Gabe Seeley Morris, and today we're going to be talking about the parts of an academic essay and the job that each part has to do. Part 1. Structure and Convention. As I discussed in the lesson on thesis statements, academic writing is governed by conventions, established ways of doing things that most practitioners generally agree on. The structure of an essay is also a convention, an established way of introducing new ideas into an academic or scholarly setting. It's worth pointing out that the word essay comes from French, and it simply means try. An essay, in essence, is a tryout for an idea. If the idea works, it catches on, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Understanding an essay as an attempt, though, may help you cut down on some of the anxiety about the process. Every part of an essay is conventional, and each part has a purpose. My focus here will be on explaining the purpose of each part and explaining common mistakes or misconceptions. Basic academic structure is based on 3 parts. We call this the rule of threes, and it's based on patterns that help explain, clarify, and underscore ideas. The rule of threes exists because it's the basis of patterns. 1 occurrence or discovery might be an isolated event. 2 might be a coincidence. 3, however, suggests a pattern and a purpose. The 3 general parts of an essay are the introduction, body, and conclusion. This is true at every level of academic text, from the paragraph to the book. Paragraph, short essay, long essay, or book, all are based on the same basic structure. Longer academic works will often use patterns within patterns. For instance, a book will have an introductory chapter. Each chapter will have its own introduction, and each section within the chapter will have an introductory paragraph. Each paragraph has a topic sentence that does the same job. This pattern makes it easier for writers to structure their arguments, and easier for readers to process them. The writer does the real work ahead of time, allowing the reader to take in the information and ideas with less effort. In a good essay, at least. Part 2. Introductions. Introductions are often the place student writers go wrong first. Many people get blocked on the introduction, thinking they have to have a strong introduction at the very beginning of the process. They get blocked because they can't write the rest of the paper until they've written the introduction. However, this is a serious misconception, one that causes a lot more problems than necessary. The introduction actually has a very simple job: to give context to what you're about to argue in the essay. That context may be textual, explaining who or what you're going to write about, social or cultural, for instance, telling the reader when they may have encountered the topic, or historical, explaining the background of the topic. For instance, if you were writing an essay about Barbara Ehrenreich's book, Nickeled and Dimed, you might give an economic or historical context in the introduction. Such an opening would give readers an idea of where the argument picks up, which would then be expanded in the essay. In many cases, it's best to write the introduction after writing the essay. That way you've already established your main ideas to yourself, and you have a better sense of what the essay is actually about. Often the process of writing the essay goes in a different direction than you expected, and you're left with an introduction that doesn't really reflect what the essay is saying. Saving the intro for last makes sure the reader gets the right context. It's a common misconception that an introduction has to grab the reader or catch their attention, an idea that comes from journalism and magazine writing. That is true in many instances. In a magazine like The New Yorker, for instance, where there are many other articles competing for attention. But in an academic article, it's more important to convey useful information. Remember the purpose of academic writing, as discussed in the Research Refresher argument lesson. You're bringing new ideas to an audience of people who are already interested in new ideas. Readers read academic writing because it contains something they need to know, not because they want to be entertained or gripped. It's nice if academic writing is entertaining, but it doesn't need to be. And freeing yourself from that misconception can help you get through the process. Another common mistake is including irrelevant information in the introduction. Never ever begin an essay with "since the beginning of time," or some similar generality. You don't know everything from the beginning of time, and you certainly can't explain it all in one essay. Exaggerations, superlatives, euphemisms, and fluff don't belong in the intro. Only relevant information that helps the reader. If you're writing about an author, for instance, where they were born and went to school or what awards they won is irrelevant, unless it's actually part of your argument. In most cases, the intro will end with a thesis statement. If it's a short essay, the intro may be one paragraph, and the thesis is the last line or two. In a longer essay, the intro may be a few pages, and the thesis may take on its own full paragraph. You can see the lesson on crafting thesis statements on our YouTube channel. Part 3. Bodies. The body of the essay is where all the important stuff is. The key points, explanations of your argument, the evidence. The first essay structure you ever learn is the 5-paragraph theme. And that is the rule of threes, squared. Intro, body, and conclusion, with a 3-part body made up of 3 paragraphs. You learn it first because it's the simplest, strongest structure. And while it is simplistic and doesn't give you much room for depth or development, that basic structure stays the same as you go up in length and complexity. The basic academic structure for an essay holds true for a paragraph as well. A strong paragraph will have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. It's just that we've conventionally given those a different name at the paragraph level. The intro is called a topic sentence, the body is called support, and the conclusion is called a closing sentence. But they work in exactly the same way. The topic sentence gives background, often a transition from the previous paragraph, and establishes what the paragraph will be about. The supporting sentences provide evidence in the form of analysis, quotations from sources, examples drawn from experience, and so forth. The closing sentence will generally call back to the main thesis statement for the paper, making sure the reader connects this part of the argument to the overall argument. Remember, academic writing is based on patterns. That's how readers process complex information. Always bring your points back to the main point so the reader understands. For example, a paragraph about nickeled and dimed might look like this. In a real essay, obviously, there would be several more supporting sentences, but this is just an example. Part 4. Conclusions. The conclusion has 2 jobs: sum up the argument, and apply what you've discussed. In real-life, student essays often just stop, or the conclusion ends up being a summary of the argument. Often that summary actually takes the form of a thesis statement that may be better than the one the paper started with. That's where first draft turns into polished draft, when you get to the end and know your topic better than when you started. Summary is okay, and reiterating the thesis can be helpful, but that's not doing the full job. A good conclusion needs to apply the idea you just discussed, and provide somewhere to go from there. There are many ways to do that. You can suggest solutions to the problem you discussed. You can suggest areas of further research and discussion raised by your topic. Or you can suggest ways the reader can make use of your ideas. I sometimes like to tell my students that the conclusion is where you push the baby bird out of the nest. You've created your idea, helped it develop, and now it's time to see if it can fly. Academic writing is part of a continuous conversation. Your essay may never make it out of the classroom, but it's building on work that other people have done in the past, and putting your own 2 cents into the conversation. There's always more to learn and more to explore, so a good conclusion needs to reflect that.